the other street that goes south past the hospital. And there's any degree of interest for city water out there. And we've even talked about a rate of 1.5 times the standard rate. So that would be another revenue source for the city to do with it.
And I've come to understand that there's a 1 1/4 private line that runs roughly from 5th and Flat Street out and serves.
It serves 4 families along South Fifth Street up to
Okay.
Virgil Johnson's, which is halfway up Fifth Street Hill out there.
Okay, and there have been, from what I understand, a number of repairs on that over the last couple of years. Like, is that?
Yeah, in the last couple of years, they've been out there numerous times to repair that line.
Jim, would you mind filling me in with the situation? This is the first time I've ever heard about it.
Well, I guess in 2005, we negotiated with the hospital, we moved the house, we did all that. It's inside the city limits, and we just kind of assumed, and I know where that leads to, but it was kind of just, it wasn't a priority that water would be an issue inside the city limits. We progressed with our house, we moved it in there, we added on to it, we took a piece of property that was assessed at about $19,000, 17 acres, and now the taxable value is up over $200,000. And I've talked to city administrators from Gary Mahana to Jeff Figgenshoe and several current and previous council people in trying to get this water extended out there. I talked to those people that own that private water line from Platt Street and South Fifth, and it's not big enough. And it's not in good enough condition to add another family to it. It goes, it serves Ray Bonon's house, it serves Bonon's Valley, the barn, it serves Karen Kuhn, and it serves Virgil Johnson, and that's where it stops. And it is a private line, so, and they've protected that line because that's all it is. It's just, I think by the time it gets to Virgil Johnson's, it's 1.25 inches.
And what was their response to you at that point in time, talking to Gary and Jeff?
It was my understanding, well, Gary Mahana just flat said, no, we're not going to do that. He had several reasons, but I guess the one was, in my opinion, he didn't want to. When Jeff Figgenshoe came, he and I had several conversations about it, and as a matter of fact, we met down here a couple of different times to talk about it. We've had a group of people along that same route to the airport down South Fifth Street, which is Sierra Avenue. And basically, Jeff was very responsive. We had several different options that we talked about. First of all, we talked about an easement from George Glass's field off of South 16th Street. There's a water hydrant out there by where Glenn Kuhn lives, where George Glass used to live. The original idea was to come straight east across that field through Glass's and through McIntyre. There was a conflict there with Mr. Glass. That's a whole different issue. But so then we decided that maybe we could come up South Fifth Street and up that way. Mr. Figgenshoe, in my conversation with him, had proposed to the council, whether it made it on the agenda or not, I don't know, but he had proposed a $70,000 loan to remove that private line from Bonon's and Kuhn's and Johnson's and to replace that line and go clear to the city limits. There was also some talk about extending it south, and there was, the neighbors out in that area are still interested in buying water from the city. So, there's a pretty complex history there of the whole thing, but, again, I'm here to kind of support the Baylors in their request, and when you bring that kind of additional valuation to the city of Sac City, I think it's something that you have to consider.
I'd like to address this.
Carrie?
Anytime you put infrastructure in most cities, it's the people that are building the houses or putting the property owners, they put the infrastructure in, the city specifications, and when it's done, they turn it over to the city. It's to their benefit. It's just like if you build a new housing subdivision, the builder of that new subdivision, he puts all that infrastructure in. The city doesn't put it in. The property owners put it in, or the...
We asked to do that, Mr. Conger, and in the city ordinance, it says that the city will supply the water. They have the right to place the shut-off where they see necessary.
Yeah, next course in our code, and surely correct me if I'm wrong, we have to provide the main on the, like a subdivision or something, we supposed to provide the main, right?
You shouldn't, that shouldn't be the way it reads.
Oh, that might not be shouldn't, but maybe that's the way it reads.
Well, I don't think it.
I read that.
I don't.
But then they told us that we couldn't, put a private line in it, so.
It's not a private line. You put in a line, the city specifications, and when it's in, you turn it over to the city to maintain.
For a subdivision, I agree with you 100%.
For,
Could we do some exploration of this
anyway,
thing?
that, it's not something you can vote on tonight anyway, it's just a matter of you take this information and put it on a future agenda, but.
That's what I'd like to suggest, is that we get together and visit about this and do some investigating and put it on a future agenda. Would that be okay?
That'd be fine, but I'd like to introduce Gary Colvin, who's part of that group outside the city limits, who's definitely interested in this water project.
I have a well out there, and being on a well system in an old place, it was built in the early 1920s. I'm worried about my well going out, and to add value to my house, I would love to have city water. I know the water in Sac City is good, dealing with the water in Lytton, and working with those people over there, I know a lot about water quality, and I would be very much interested in it. I was the first time we talked about this, and I know some of the other people beyond the city limits are also interested in it.
Yes.
This afternoon, I called down to Sandy Tillinghusen, and I apologize for being relatively late with this, and I imposed upon her to ask her, or I was brought to the understanding that there may be some leaks in that private line that goes from 5th Street, or 5th and Platte up in that direction, that serves those 4 residences. Is that, and so my understanding is that there's a meter in that, at that intersection, that measures the water coming in, and then we have, of course, then the residences have their own meters to measure how much that they're using.